This is just for you.
Started realizing that's why it's called nutricide. You can keep people acting up in school.
Even in the African American narrative now, you know, that story is lost. You know, everyone kind of thinks.
Well, number one, we want to start to say thank you to the audience. The people have been very quiet, they've been very patient all this time, which is good. And they're also, you will be witnessing something that is new, unheard of, has not happened yet. But hopefully to make this a big, big explosion for you. And the guest today on the beginning of a new McCreary report. We have, of course, Dr. Gerald Deas. We'll have his history and everything else a little later on. And we have another gentleman, this is easy to remember now, Byer Tyer.
Yes.
And he's, well, let's call him historical also, that he is familiar with so many things that have taken place in our nation and what's been going on and how it's not going in many cases now. And with our program, what we would like to do is to inform our audience and to keep them alert as to what's going on. The woman who helped to get me started in this business, named Alma John, and it was a lesson. It was something that I will never forget, and I hope you never forget, and I hope you use it. And that is to remember, if you know, you should teach. If you don't know, then you should learn. And it's up to us, each one, to reach one and teach one. And I would like to put that in your head right now, and to have you remember it, and to have you live by it, to the point where if you meet a person and they don't know, and you know, then you teach them. If you also meet this person and you say, wow, he knows, then he should teach. And that's what it's all about. Let's start to teach in this sense. Dr. Deas and I, we've been together for quite a while. And this is quite a doctor. And you say, well, he's black. And in the days when we started, it was unheard of. They never heard of it. And so we started the McCreary Report. And with the McCreary Report, we of course came on strong with the Dr. Deas. And some of the things that we've done are just unbelievable. And I can't sit here and tell you everything about it, but I have the people who are familiar with what's happening. And I'm tempted at this point to call you a doctor. Byer Tyer.
Yes.
And we will be going to your area. And first we'll start though with Dr. Deas, telling us how we got started, Dr. Deas.
Yeah.
Tell us about the first doctor to be on television, to do a house call,
Right.
and you have photos, and you have memories and experience, which we hope to leave with the audience, and to them to take it and go with it, period, on this McCreary Report. You're very strong now, the medicine and doctors that are, so many doctors that are not up to, I don't want to say standard, but not up to where this doctor is, you, in a lot of areas. They tell me there's a difference. What is the difference between now, or between the black and between the other nationality of doctors? But there is a special thing that happens with African American doctors. And you, as an African American doctor, brought out a lot of differences. People, you just not treated the same thing with the same medicine, because we do have our problems as African Americans. And a lot of people don't know the difference. They just say, okay, you've everything. And so you are different in the sense that you did the house calls. A lot of people, nowadays, I think house calls are something of the past. But I also believe that it will be coming back. And before we really get into so many things that you've done, and that's what we will be doing with this program, we will talk about something a lot of people are not familiar with: starch, how it started. Whoever used to eat starch, it's true. And what about all of the drinks that they have now for young people that are dangerous? We want to talk about it.
We are addicted. Really, when I tell you, we are addicted to sodas of all colors. And in those colors are things that cause brain problems. We just don't realize it. That's why it's called nutricide. You can keep people acting up in school, not participating and doing the things they should be doing in school, learning just by colors that they drink at lunch hour and all the ingredients that they put in these foods and things like this. So unless we bring it out like a program yours did, you were the only one that ever brought up black doctor on television. There was no black doctors on television today or yesterday throughout the United States. No black male doctors to talk about anything. So where were our children to get a picture or image that there's a black man or a black person to become a doctor? So
that's history. And speaking of history, let's hear a little bit of your background, sir.
The first thing I would like to say is, it's a privilege to be on the stage with the two of you gentlemen. And when I heard that, I would have an opportunity to sit on stage with you, there's no way that I could refuse Mr. Heath's invitation. So for me, I'm taken aback by this opportunity simply to be in your presence. And I think partly in acknowledging that, everyone has come from somewhere. And typically in both education or even in the African American narrative now, that story is lost. Yes. Everyone kind of thinks that they're out there on their own. Right. Partly when we think about people like Du Bois, or even if we think about John Dewey and the progressive educational movement, the idea of including both an understanding of self, community, and democracy in education. And now, we have been overtaken by administrative progressivism. The fact that now our schools are test-driven environments, yes, and normally end up, with students in debt and intellectually defunct when it comes time for them to, cash that, proverbial check. Sure. The reason that I'm back here in Roosevelt, and at this point, actually, in 3 weeks, I would have lived in New York longer than I've lived in my hometown. So I think at that point, that makes me officially a New Yorker. And very proud to be on Long Island. And as the director of the African American Museum, and knowing the history, of this community, I think it's important, that I, again, add to that narrative. And I would say to anyone in the audience, an opportunity like this is one that we should never turn down. I could talk to you about history. I could talk to you about, the present state of Black America, but I think that it's such a familiar story until, I hope that it just, stimulates maybe personal intervention by everyone who, hears that narrative. And the narrative, again, is the same. It's about poverty and educational inequality.
And you mentioned something earlier, which I have always taken a look at, and that is the tests that are given to a lot of students, and especially our African American students. Some of them, the questions, the way they are presented, and say, this is the test. For a lot of us, it's not really a test. And I know that you've noticed the difference in how it works.
Well, when I said test, you know, in some ways I was talking about school, but in other ways I was using tests as a general synopsis of what every African American deals with. You know, that level of stress when you're driving your car and the police pulls up behind you and stops you, and you know they have no reason to stop you. Do you pass that test?
Yeah. Well, and you know, and the other thing is that our music has changed. When you think of our great musicians who could write in notes compositions that would be known for eons, years, then they put a music and play it up, because we do not own media, so they control our media attention. So hip hop comes along. Nothing wrong with hip hop, although I know all the people in hip hop because I was raised right around, they were raised right in my community of Hollis, Queens. I had to start another program called Hip Hop to Hip Hope because because if you hop, you can jump it so high. But when you hope, it'll make your brain fly. You see, and that's why I took, not against hip hop, but I wanted to let the kids know that to learn to write music. Look how the Japanese and Chinese, if you see them in all these major symphony orchestras, you don't find the blacks there because we haven't been trained at it, in a sense. We have ability to train them, but we don't have the opportunity because to get in one of those orchestras, you've got to have done a yeoman's work in other orchestras playing the violin, bass, and whatnot.
But I think that actually you are bringing, you know, into focus again that cultural disconnect. You know, most African Americans didn't read music, but they learned to play instruments because it was a part of either their Christian experience or their communal experience.
Okay, right.
You know, so today, when you look at hip hop, they are actually articulating their communal experience. And again, it's poverty, it's violence, you know, it's the need for economic mobility.
Right.
And if using those words or being able to express that narrative means that it's a life-changing opportunity for them, more and more people are going to embrace it. Plus, you have to think, you're kind of piggybacking on what you said, the idea that you don't need to know how to read to be a rapper. You don't have to graduate from high school to be a rapper.
I understand.
And you can work for 20 years and never make the money that you will make as a rapper.
Yeah, but you see, if you put money there as the motivation that this is how we have to do it, then I don't see no future doctors. I don't see no future lawyers. I don't see no future philosophers. Oh, look at our black colleges. Our black colleges right now are suffering.
Yes.
And a lot of them can't get the type of student that will come in that place and study. Those places don't give degrees out for nothing. You have to pass tests. You have to pass and read, and you have to study philosophies and all the other things and so forth. And if you don't know how to read well or write well, you can't get past the first year in these colleges. And a lot of failing in their first year. First year. So you can't say that what has happened in our environment has not put our brain in a certain situation where we're still a slave. Still a slave.
But we have to learn. And it has to be pointed out. It has to be, have to turn the spotlight on that.
Oh, yes.
See, and you talk about money, that's to them as God. And how much money you got is more to people as a rule. You find a crook, he could be doing everything wrong, but he has a lot of money. And people look up and say, oh, he's a good guy, or he did this, or he did that. But it's only money that made him look that way. And so when the guys become the rappers, you don't have to go to college. You're barely out of high school, if you're out of high school. That they know how to rap, put language together? Where do you go with that?
I would say that I think the issue is a little more complex than that. Because I would say if the commitment was to education, several of our predominantly black communities here, you have students who are graduating, valedictorian and can't, score high enough on the SAT. So are we talking, about their academic self-concept as, being high, but, what happens is when you're undereducated, those opportunities still don't present themselves.
Right.
So who is at fault? The other thing that I would like to say, about the connection to both poverty, the need for money, and being socially connected. At the same time, if we use rap as the gauge for social responsibility, you're going to find that rapping as a career typically doesn't link itself to social responsibility. But if you want to say, well, the responsibility about money or about us making living wages should be that of our government or should be a result of being well educated, you have several African Americans who have master's degrees, even PhDs, that are out of work. So we have to start to rethink that particular narrative. What things can we develop in our community that could actually support us as well as our vision? How much more are we willing to pay for a pair of sneakers because it has a brand name on it, but we aren't willing to frequent our own businesses and pay a little more, even though it's in our name. So it's a shift in focus.
But I'll give you a good example. Argo starch was eaten by African American women, particularly, for 90 years, carrying babies. Argo starch robbed the person of iron, because when they ate the starch, it removed iron from their system. So instead of having a hemoglobin of 15, they had a hemoglobin of 7. Wow. So that baby was suffering because it wasn't getting oxygen to the brain. So when I brought this to Bill McCreary, I said, look, Bill, this stuff is still on the shelves of our stores in black areas only. It wasn't in white areas, only black areas. That's why I call it nutricide. They were taking us out just with a box of starch. And that starch was eaten. It was very cheap. They ate it and chewed it and swallowed it for 90 years. So when we got on this program, and I showed this to other white audiences, Bill McCreary said, let's do shows. We did about 50 shows on Argo starch. That's right. And by the time we finished, we put the starch company out of business in Chicago, Illinois.
Wow.
And that's what's there. To the point where we were invited down to Washington, D.C. for the Food and Drug Administration and gave us an award for just that. But that's just Argo starch. But just think of our communities when you go in those little stores. You see these little colored drinks called quarter water. Those quarter water drinks, they were nothing but sugar and dyes and preservatives, which affect the brain. I got on their case because in order to those drinks to look like a fruit, like this, they had to put metabisulfite in it, a chemical to keep the color, because everything would turn brown. So the children drink those all day, playing, going to school, affecting the brain. Hyperactivity, can't concentrate in school. In fact, some of the kids used to call it crack juice. After they take it, make them so active, and things like this. If we didn't have a black television show to do this kind of thing on, and put this they had to put metabisulfite in it, which was a chemical to keep the colors. So we did shows on that. We put that whole company out of business. That's why you don't see those little colored drinks no more. All right? What I'm trying to say is that if we don't have media that can do proper things like that in health now. I'm not putting down hip hop. I could recite one right now for you. but my hip hop might be a little different. Let me just take 1 minute to get my hip hop. It says, I want to be my own man. Don't want to be on loan man. Can't stand the groan of man when I'm knocking at his door. I've been through hell, my friend, never knew there was an end. That's why I could always grin getting up off the floor. Now, I'm not asking for your share. You don't even have to say you care. Just put the opportunity there and I'll even up the score. Got to be my own man, got to follow my own plan. If you care, you give a damn by healing up the sore. So come on and walk with me. Come on and talk with me. Tell me how it feels to be free, even if you're poor. Got to be my own man. Got to build with my own hands so we can call this our land and live together evermore. That's my man.
All right.
That's my man.
Dude, I can't, we're not worthy. How am I doing with that?
And first of all, when our professionals become professionals, don't move out of the community. You're not given an image that you're a lawyer, that you're a doctor, that you're a nurse, that you're a teacher. Stay there. I had to stay there 40 years practicing medicine. 40 years to raise my children right there. They can knock on my door anytime, night, day, so forth. Sacrifices aren't made that way anymore. Doctors want to live higher than my, or some of them. But the thing is that children got to see that doctor in the neighborhood and see the doctor's children out there. And then they copy after you, because what I did in my office, I used to hire young ladies, high school girls, that come in my office and learn how to be a receptionist from my wife, who I've been married 57 years. And so, but I gave them a job to be a receptionist and a doctor, and they are lawyers today, doctors today, and so forth. Seriously, if you're there
Yes.
to teach and do those kind of things.
All right. We'll take a break now. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. And as we continue, hopefully there's lots more that you will learn and we will experience as we continue to talk with you. Let's talk now with our guests. We'll start with Dr. Deas. Dr. Deas, you have another doctor, former, and Dr. What last name is Feingold.
Feingold.
Feingold. And in that, and you've been with them for what, 20, 30 years?
Oh, yeah.
A long time.
50 years.
50 years. And one of the things that you have been going over together is the way that they are servicing our people,
That's right.
especially the young people,
That's right.
the future, that it's something that you're very much involved in. Tell us about how
Yes.
Feingold works.
Benjamin Feingold showed 50 years ago that certain additives in food cause brain derangements, almost make you drunk, seeing words different and things like this. And he showed, and I'll give you a good example, and you look at your children today, he removed the following: artificial synthetic colors, artificial flavors, petrochemicals that are in our food that they put in there, artificial sweeteners such as NutraSweet, Splenda, and all those kind of things. And they showed that these kind of things cause problems with our children. And the big problem is this: behavior marked hyperactivity, constant motion, impulsive actions such as unresponsive discipline, destructiveness, inappropriate noises, compulsive actions, touching things, aggression, work habits, chewing on clothing, and things like this. Learning development, impatience, distraction, failure to complete projects, inability to listen, neuromuscular involvement, accident-prone, poor muscle coordination, poor eye-hand coordination. If you have all of these kind of things, I'm going to give some of the people, it's real. It's so real, but our children are having a problem with these things. They're not dumb. Let me tell you, when I came out of Brooklyn, there was poor people there, but we didn't have all this stuff. Think about our generation. We have produced the doctors, the writers, and all these other great people, philosophers, painters. We didn't have all this stuff, but it's there now, and it's controlling us. And unless parents go to those PTA meetings, never mind, you not go to a PTA meeting and see 10 people sitting up in there, and they got 200 children in that school. They're not doing anything but just coming to the meeting. They got to start looking what the children are eating, things like this. Okay, if they're interested in getting this book, free of charge, it will change your whole attitude of what's going on with our children and how you can rectify that and not be put on a drug called Ritalin and all these other drugs. And the telephone numbers are right here that you can get that, and the book is free as such.
How are they supposed to become aware of what's going on? Okay, in the book it tells you it's what they're eating, it's the diet. And everybody, I won't say everybody, people are familiar with that diet. People are also familiar with what can happen when you don't eat certain foods or vegetables, etc. And when you do, and a lot of people don't, and the people who know that you don't and know that you're in trouble are doctors, physicians, etc. A lot of them know.
They put them on the drug.
And
Ritalin,
so
and all
they
those
should
kind of
be
drugs.
also informed and be able to tell the people that they're working with, the mothers and fathers of children, of what they're eating and how they should stop. And in the book, it tells you what can happen with these people who eat the wrong foods, that children who just cannot concentrate. There's nothing wrong other than what they're eating and what they're being fed, and how the parents are letting them go through with that, and they don't have to.
Well, you know, Bill, what we used to do on house calls, it was the first show that ever, instead of studio, we went into the houses and showed where diseases are produced at and how it's produced. Give you a good example. We did a show called Don't Brush with the Flush.
You have to explain that.
So, you know, Bill, when you sit on the toilet and you move your bowels and flush, the germs that come out of that toilet hits your bottom. In men it hits the penis, a prostate gland, and so forth, bacteria. With females, they get all kinds of irritation to their female organs that leads to bladder infections, kidney infections, and so forth. Now, the doctor, you can go there and get your diagnosis. But if you're still flushing without closing that seat, that's what that cover is for. It's not for the decoration. It's to be closed and flush. And then the germs can't get out. When we had the outhouses, we didn't have that problem. Plop, down. The only thing that you were worried about is a snake at the bottom of the thing. And so you might sit on the toilet like this, so nothing would come up there and get you. But when they brought that bathroom into the house, now the Japanese make a toilet now that it does not flush until you get up, then it flush. Then you close the cover and it flushes. But just think of how many women had kidney infections, pyelonephritis, all kinds of urethritis, all kinds of irritations to their female organs and things like that by flushing while it's sitting. Now, that's what we were bringing out, because when we did house calls, We went into the bathroom with the cameraman and showed when you did that flush how that stuff comes out, you know? And that was important. People came to me and said, thank you. Now my doctor said I'd be on antibiotics forever because they didn't know where the infection was coming from. You know how much antibiotics cost? You see? So, and so you didn't treat it. You didn't treat it. So what did you give? All kind of kidney infections and things like this. So that's what our show was able to do. That's why it was called House Call. We did not do it in studio. We went into the houses and showed where diseases are, like these spray cans people use to have a good smell. Yeah, you get a good smell like hell, because that smell, that stuff dances in the air. That spray goes right on down into your lungs, bronchitis. Then you go to the doctor, he says, oh, here's an antibiotic for bronchitis. Instead of saying, don't use that spray can. Think about it, people. Mm-hmm. That spray can, they got things you can put on your wall now, and it goes, psst, psst. If that stuff stays in the air. It smells good, but you're breathing it. It irritates your lungs. And so you go and get cough medicine across the counter. You get rid of asthma that's caused chemical asthma. You see? So having media like Bill...
How are you gonna change that? Since that's
education,
cause.
And it has to be media. And your show was the only one in the United States that had a black male doctor. Then and now, there is no black male doctors. Even Dr. Oz, chosen by somebody else to teach us something. Yet we were doing that way before Oz and those kind of things.
Well, we have to continue to do as much as we can to keep our audience, the audience, informed.
Informed.
And you have a number of informative information in your hand right now.
If you go to your Bible,
and we can run through it.
Craving Earth. This is written by Columbia University in public health. She quotes in the first few pages of her book about argo starch. She's a PhD, and how I got rid of argo starch. And just, you can hold this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Miracles. You can go to a store, miracle food from the Bible. You'll be surprised how much cure is in a book like this to go to your store and get a book like that.
I'll take
Very
that.
important. New foods for healing. Man, everything's in food. Just think of what they put on those crops when they spray. You're getting it, people. You're getting it. DDT, all that stuff, they use in other countries. It's outlawed here, but when those vegetables come in here, they have all those additives on it and things like this.
One more.
And this is a little book, Toxic Sludge is Good for You. Now let me tell you what sludge is. Sludge is at the end of the water, fills up all the sludge, has all the chemicals from the farmland in it, and so forth. So they said, oh, they might have some nutrients in it, so we'll put it in a bag, sell it to farmers, and let them fertilize their soil with it. We're just getting all those toxic materials. That's what's happening in Flint, Michigan right now with lead and all that kind of stuff. So it's really going. So we have all these kind of things, and at the end of this show, if you want to get this book, it will save your child. It don't cost anything, but just be selective about food.
All right. It's a good way to go.
Yeah.
The information. And that's what we're all about.
Because, you know, in medical school, I walk around with this hat on. I teach. I've been teaching there for
Ideal.
all these years. It's called Ideas. My name is Deas. Put an I in front of it, becomes Ideas. So they say, Dr. Deas, why do you wear that hat around in medical school? I said, because you all ain't doing nothing. I have ideas, you know, because you have, the left brain says, I think logically. The right brain says, I am creative. So I tell the people, look, even the Jewish people walk around with things on their head. They have a yarmulke. That tells that person is religious and educated, just by one little cap. I only got this cap. ideas. Seriously. And if you can't use that media, as Bill has done through the years now, you don't know what he's went through, putting money into the show, never getting advertisers to keep the show going. Not even advertisers from black businesses, you know? So they were always on the edge of failing because of money. Mm-hmm. But he kept going all those years. You know? On a major station, Channel 5, not little station way out here, Channel 5, on Sunday and Saturdays.
It was good. It was good. It was all learning.
Learning, sure.
And you make the sacrifice, as it were.
Yes.
And you do it because you feel it inside. And the whole thing is to help other people. If you're in a position to help other people, that's very important.
Oh, yeah,
that
John Henry
that
Clark,
you do it. That you
John
do it.
Henry Clark and all those wonderful people that came along in our time. He had all of those people on the show. And black people and children could see. Here's these great men, you know, on that show.
Yes. We have reporters who are out here now. It's not like they used to be.
Sure.
There are a lot of things missing. There are a lot of things that need to be that's not done. A lot of things that they should know and they need to learn. And in the position that we're in right now, we will try and inform to give that information out.
In fact, you know, Bill, we presented on your show also the first black Santa Claus. You know, I used to take my children to see Santa Claus, and it would be a white Santa Claus. So I attacked that. I said, why should there only be a white Santa Claus? So they said, okay, Dr. Deas, one of the department stores, we'll put a black Santa Claus and a white Santa Claus in the toy department, back to back, and let the children in. The black children didn't want to sit on the black Santa Claus's lap. The white children didn't want. So the black Santa Claus was all by himself. Just no children coming to see him, and they were back to back. You see what the brain can do? I mean, it's almost, it can't be something good coming out of a black Santa Claus. So I wrote a song at that time that Brooke Benton recorded called Soul Santa. Here's another rap.
One more rap and then we're gonna go to the mat.
Since nobody's seen Santa on Christmas when he steals down the chimney with care, wouldn't it be so revealing if Santa had black kinky hair? I know his cheeks wouldn't be rosy, but you could tell it was cold when you saw his red underwear peeking over his soulful jelly roll. Now Santa's a fine soul brother. He loves all his fellow man. He'll do anything for you, at least all that he can. But no matter what he looks like, and no matter what you've been told, there's one thing about your Santa. He has that thing called soul. And that's the only black Santa Claus song in the world. Because I belong to the union of writers.
Yes.
There's no black Santa Claus song for our black children. So everything has to be white that's good. So.
All right. Another, well, can we record him? Can we put him on a tape?
He's a rock star, man. I don't know what to say. It's kind of hard following that.
More R&B, right?
Only because of McCreary. You can't understand what he was in the whole industry of communication. The black first having his own show, Channel 5, not way up here and such. It was his show that brought on people that nobody ever heard of, educated and things like that.
It's a blessing.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And being able to do what we're doing now is more of a blessing. And we say thank you. And we continue to do it as long as we have you out there. And of course, we will need your support. So don't you forget. If it ever drops down to that point where they're saying, we need your support, we want you, et cetera, we know you're there. All right.
Sure.
What are you doing? You're teaching. You know those who need to learn, they learn. And once they do, they teach also. So continue as a people. And we'll be back with more information for you. All right. See you then. All right.
Well,
Well, welcome back. And right now, we'd like to talk and get some more information from one of our special guests with us. You're out here in Long Island, Roosevelt, and you've done quite a bit out here, just with your being here, being present. But this is your area. This is your area. You were born over here. You were raised over here, and you've done quite a bit. And you are spreading the word, so to speak. And this is another way of doing it, to sharing what you know, what you've learned, and letting others know the same. So tell us, as you view it.
Well, again, I would even, be remiss not to thank you again for this opportunity. Like I said, you're a part of my motivation for being here today, Mr. McCreary. So, again, thank you very much for the opportunity to be on your show. I would say, like I said, I'm only a few months from being really a resident of Long Island, or looking at myself in a different perspective, regarding, I guess, our lifeline. And I tell, even young people to think about that. Often when we think about how we contribute to our society or what we have done, it's very difficult for someone to look ahead and to kind of gauge what they perceive their future, to be. But it's something that our kids definitely need to be thinking about now. And I bring that up because I think, this conversation should begin with a context of, again, what does it mean to be young, black, and on Long Island? A lot of people continue to bring up issues, in our community, but few really discuss, how those things have been, addressed. The fact that we're in a century in which we can say we had, the first black president, where we're having a campaign for the presidency now in which part of the issue is, Black Lives Matter, and we're starting to re-examine civil rights, economic disparities, and what it means to be educated, and all of those issues deal directly, with the African American experience. Even when I read and I do research, as an African American historian, one of the things that I bring up often to young people is the fact that we are the only people in America in which the term uppity applies. Of no other race of people do you discourage them from being uppity, but black people. But at the same time, when you think about the cultural contributions that we have made to American society, the idea that, Elvis isn't cool if it wasn't, for an African drum and rhythm. Sure. The idea that most of American culture, from theater to performing arts, it's not hip until it's blackened up a little. And I try to use these terms in ways that people aren't so desensitized to talking about us. In fact, I used the term Negro at a recent talk, to try to provide a historical context to some young people. And actually got a response from a young person that they thought that the word was somewhat offensive, that I should be using the term African American. And when we think about even our language, the idea that we have these historical stalemates when we think about ordinary language, and how young people even perceive the progression of African Americans in a narrative when we speak about each other, also is a testimony of, us not reading, us not exploring our history, beyond what is told to us. That popular culture has become the thing that defines us now. That, if you're not a reality TV star, You know, the question of how you gain fame or the procession that one has to go through to be a professional, you know, most people are totally unaware of that. So, you know, my conversation, you know, today, I think I want to kind of piggyback on those, you know, those two conflicts. The idea that Black lives matter, but at the same time, it really doesn't. And I think that to bring it home, you know, to talk about, you know, organizations, you know, like the EOC, we could say, you know, the Long Island EOC, we can say Erase Racism, that, you know, people talk about these organizations as if they no longer matter. Even the African American Museum, you know, you talk about them as if they don't matter. And I think that, you know, the truth is we have to learn how to reinvest into these institutions that have been set up, have had, you know, long roots, you know, in being providers for this community, and really demand more so that they can, you know, their mandate is raised a little higher. Because Black lives matter. You know, the last thing I would like to say is that when we think about Black lives matter and we think about the quality of education that we receive in our schools, you know, I kind of hinted on this before. You know, the idea that you could have 100 GPA from a Hempstead or Roosevelt, and that every other school district would frown on your effort. With a 100 GPA, it doesn't speak, you know, to your academic self-concept. It simply speaks on how these other schools view this particular community.
Sure.
The idea that, you know, there is such a thing as a black school versus a white school. You know, isn't this public education? And while we allow there to be a title or a stigma still attached to our institutions, the idea that a black school, even if it was successful, even if every single student had 100 GPA, that most white students still wouldn't want to attend it. The question is, you know, does Black lives matter? You know, right now we're dealing with issues of, you know, questioning criminality versus, you know, moral integrity. The idea that being black and being stopped by a cop is something that we're used to. You know, the idea that a black person assaulting you or robbing you is acceptable in your community because you're in a black community, therefore crime should be there. And Dr. Deeds, to piggyback on something that you said earlier, you know, I had a young man to approach me and ask me that if I am so educated and I'm doing so well, then why do I live in my community? Yeah. And that was about him. That wasn't about me. You know, the idea that, you know, how we measure success in the African American community has to change. You know, success, which you bring up, you know, the rap music or the amount of money that you make, doesn't necessarily equate to longevity. It may not be something that you will be proud of on your timeline, simply the amount of money you make. You know, and that this isn't a judgment that is regularly made in our black community. That we have hundreds of African American stars, you know, in both the media, in you know, athletes, you know, even, you know, business people. But the fact that you're struggling to do a show right now because no one has stepped up to say that this matters. You know, and when we think about the number of people who have come out of, you know, black communities and have gone on to do great things, you know, for themselves, and that we seldom see them return to our communities. And many of us, you know, are cousins and family members and could very easily pick up a phone and reach out to those people. But would they come back because they want to come back? Would they come back because they feel obligated? Or will they come back because Black lives matter?
I think that what happens and what I have observed over the years about basically what you're talking about now, it's not being able to stick with one another, to be together as a group. You see, somehow they have found a way to split. You're not as strong as you could be. Let's go to Jamaican. Let's go to Barbados, Bajans, the people from Trinidad. And all you have to do is to say, this guy's from Jamaica. He did this, he did that, he did. You tell it to a Bajan, and they said, wow, really? Then you split them that way. They can both be from the same area. They can all at one time have been, their parents could have been slaves under, et cetera, et cetera. But you split them by making this person so different from the other that you put them apart. You split them. You don't bring them together. You put them apart.
But I think that, you know, the whole idea of being American and being African American and knowing that regardless of where you're from, you know, you could say that you're multiracial or whatever the case may be. The bottom line is that you're always going to be confronted with the idea that you're black. And that, you know, to divorce yourself from that reality, you know, becomes, you know, a question of, you know, what is our commitment to our future. When you say to a young person that you want them to be better and they don't know what that means, a better what, you know, also brings, you know, to light that maybe there's not as many mirrors as we think they are in our community, or as many role models. Because a lot of people love themselves, but seldom are we teaching our children how to love each other.
That is very, very important, that you should learn to love one another, to cooperate with one another, and to promote one another.
Well, this is where our churches should be coming in. You know, like, I'll be frank with you. I've taught Sunday school for 40 years. And I can tell you this, being a doctor with those children every Sunday made a lot of them want to become doctors and things like this. Sunday morning is where we congratulate each other. The church is still the main function that can really do the job you're talking about. You know, and it's not, seemingly, our young people are not going to church. They're not even going to Sunday school. I went to Concord Baptist Church. It was jammed with children. Today, sparsely jammed. Sparsely.
Well, you know, even in your bringing up the church, you know, I think that, you know, the church did more than actually tie us, you know, or to make spiritual ties, or to tie us to the community. It also taught us how to assimilate into mainstream society. You know, right now you go to church and you can wear sneakers, a pair of jeans, and then your favorite t-shirt. You know, I learned to tie my first tie at church. I got the first spanking for playing in my church clothes, you know, because I thought they were ordinary clothes. You know, we have grown men who are wearing jogging suits and young kids who are emulating that, believing that they can wear jogging suits the rest of their lives. You know, at some point, you know, when we think of these institutions and how we engage our institutions, that also comes back to being able to respect black lives and respecting our community and having a higher expectation on, you know, what the black community is supposed to look like.
I think if you continue to promote that, and wherever you can get that out into the open, that somebody, somewhere, or a group will pick up on it. And you have to continue to push it, because it is right, it is responsible, and it will make others responsible. Again, you are following the chain, which says, what? If you know, do what?
And teach.
And if you don't know,
learn.
Each one,
teach one.
All right,
well,
that's it.
Well, and including that bill also is that if we took our black colleges along and said, or you're admitted to college, say Morehouse. But to get your full degree, you're going to have to tutor one person in your community for 4 years, and present him at your graduation if you want to get your degree. Let's put them to work instead of playing all kind of silly cards and games and things like this. Put that student who's gotten to college. He's already proved himself. Give him one student, female, male to male. But they have to tutor them for 4 years that they're in college and present them at graduation. Man, you'd have the whole place
Well, you
filled.
know, I would make an argument for reparations if that was the case. Because I believe that, you know, it's our, you know, government's responsibility to prepare that student for college in the first place.
All right.
And then second, you know,
Yeah,
no,
sure.
but my argument is that no one else going to college is having to take on that personal responsibility. So if we're taking on this responsibility, or we're asking students to take on the responsibility
Yeah.
of the community,
Yeah, sure.
then they should go to college for free.
Well,
All right.
but yes, but getting into college don't mean you're going to graduate from college, because I understand right now the writing ability of students entering college today in some of the colleges can't write well. I'm talking about compositions and things like this. You know, so that's what I'm trying to say. Make them more responsible, not just graduate from college, but they can write. You have to see how the teachers are complaining about how our students are writing.
But we're still talking about the same thing. We're talking about a deficit that actually passed someone that couldn't write from 3rd grade through high school,
Right.
and they were able to enter college without writing.
I understand that.
So, you know, so we have to, you know, again, put things in perspective. Are we demanding more of our institutions? If a student is still motivated, knowing that he has, you know, those shortcomings, maybe we have failed that student on a totally different level.
Oh, sure.
You should not promote a
Yeah, I
student
agree.
that's not prepared to be successful.
I
It's
understand.
something we
I
have to
understand.
work on.
Yes.
And a lot of people now have been informed. They know what's going on. And it's up to do something about it. Not just know, but to do something about it, to do the right thing. Each one, reach one, teach one.
I
That's
agree.
it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
It's a pleasure being here with you guys today. I still feel like the low man on the totem pole.
All right.
But it's always a pleasure.
One, I'd just like to thank each and every one, especially you out there watching, for watching the program. And I also look forward to your response to the program. I want to keep in mind and also thank the guests that we've had. We appreciate both of you. We appreciate the audience also. And we will be going on and on with more and more. And we want you right with us. Thank you. All right.